Can you smell it? That is the power shifting in Scottish football after Celtic pitched up at Tynecastle to punt long balls, time waste from the 18th minute and tactical fill their way out of difficult situations. It did, however, finish 2-2, allowing Rangers to close the gap to 4 points with a win over Dundee. There were also handsome victories for Aberdeen, Motherwell and for Falkirk, all of which we will discuss on today's Terrace podcast. To do so, I have a man I am under strict orders to keep on a leash and curtail his rants. Strict orders from the man himself. It is Tony Anderson. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm well. That sounds like the same job Mandy has on a daily basis. So welcome. Welcome to my life.
I am glad it's just a fleeting appearance for me, I have to say. Just a wee, before we do get into the games, yeah, sorry, man. Before we do get into the games, just a quick disclaimer, a wee message for the attention of Graham and Gary that I actually was on both of the main shows following both of Hearts' only 2 league defeats this season. And that's where we will begin this week, as Hearts twice came from behind to take a point against the defending champions. It was a very chaotic, very eventful 90 plus minutes. Austin Trusty was sent off late in the game. Before that, Benjamin Negron had given Celtic the lead. Stuart Findlay equalised. Yang put Celtic ahead before that red card that I mentioned, before a late equaliser from Braga. We could talk about lots of different facets of this game, start lots of different ways, Tony. We're probably going to have to make sure we keep a lid on what we do speak about this game, but where would you like to start?
It was just like, I feel like the game was like everything that's good and bad about Scottish football was sort of like, was like incorporated into that 90 minutes. It was like, the first half was like unbelievably low quality.
Yes.
For the sort of 2 best teams in the league. I wanted to touch on Derek McInnes at the start, because obviously there was a huge decision that he made with starting Craig Gordon over Swallow in the Hearts goal. And I just wanted to talk about, like, just to go over, I thought Derek McInnes got so much right in this game, but it's like this penchant for making issues that aren't there, which has always been a part of his sort of makeup as a manager. I actually think in the end probably cost him the win.
But which part specifically? Because, I mean, what I would push back on there is that while I do agree he can do that, his hand was forced to a large extent in this game with...
I just think it's simply about Craig Gordon. I don't think Craig Gordon should have started.
Oh, the Craig Gordon specifically? Yeah, I thought you were talking about like other parts of the team.
This is what I'm going to come on to, is praising Derek McInnes, because I think the Craig Gordon, it just didn't have to be made. I thought his reasons for it sounded like a man overthinking about needing certain characters on the pitch. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, I don't think there's loads of guys in that park that understand how big a game this is and can cope with it.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was just silly. And then I think Gordon didn't look too clever at either of the goals. His kicking is poor, which put Hearts under pressure, which I'll come on to, especially in the first half, because I thought Hearts got it spot on. We're not having their best. They basically were missing their midfield, Hearts.
Yes.
So they weren't able to take the control that they needed in this game. And in the first half especially, and with Leonard having a really poor first half for his debut, that meant that the game just got hoisted into people just giving the ball away. And it wasn't until like later on in the first half where Hearts started to get a grip of it, and then they put the fear of God into Celtic by just being really, really aggressive and going on the front foot and pressing. And then Celtic were, which we'll come on to later, pathetic. I mean, I think that was as bad as I've ever seen Celtic in terms of the way, not just about like pure performance, but the way they were approached a match and the way that, and they looked like a team, they looked like a poor Dundee team coming to play at Parkhead. And
it was like a bottom 6 team trying to shitfest at points. It really was.
It was just so embarrassing. But I think with what McInnes got so right is that he got up and at Celtic. He understood that he probably wouldn't be able to get the control. He's probably surprised at how much control Hearts were eventually able to get in there, considering they were missing sort of like Beningame and Deva. I think Hearts really missed Beningame in the first half, and if they had him there, If those two were there, I think Hearts would have won that comfortably. I think it would have been like 90 minutes of like what happened between sort of like half time in the 70th minute. I know Celtic got a goal in the counter in there, but if you see if they'd been available, I think that would just been 90 minutes like that, because Celtic were abysmal in there and Hearts just gobbled them up. And since Celtic were turning the ball over constantly, it meant that Celtic had to constantly give away fouls.
Yeah.
And that just fit. So Hearts weren't able to play at their best due to what they were missing, but it meant they were able to get Celtic spooked enough to constantly play into their hands and just give them tons of set pieces round the box, which with the makeup of the Hearts team yesterday, that's obviously one of Hearts' strengths, but they were missing their other strengths. So that was like the number one way for them to get at Celtic. And McInnes was able to get the game to go just like that, but even he must have been shocked at quite how much the Hearts were able to get on top of Celtic. I mean, McGregor was sitting at 66% pass completion. It was, I was
Braga
stunned.
did a good job on him.
Oh, Braga was excellent in terms of like not everything went his way, but in terms of like the hassling and
just
again,
how dogged he is.
Yeah.
And just never gives up. He's just like he's the epitome of, do you know how there's that sort of cliche that fans will always back you as long as you give 100%? I feel like he's the epitome of that. He's just always given 100%.
And this is what happens when there's an emotional connection between fans and a player, I think. I'm going to doubt that Braga's like that over his entire career. I think he's in a moment just now where he's in love with Hearts. He's in love with them. So there's and that's what you get when someone has that connection. It's even when it's not going well, he's just running himself into the ground. Like that foul, the foul he wins for the second goal, for example, he's not favourite there at all. And that's just someone who's absolutely desperate.
Well, I think he has the ball, gives it away, but then manages to recover and win a foul, if I'm remembering it correctly. But yeah, to go back to something about what you were saying earlier, I think both teams were very guilty of not bringing in equality to the start of that game, other than the Negron free kick. I still think it's a very good free kick, and when it's the Wall side, the goalkeeper's looking after one side and the Wall the other side typically, and I know it's not right in the corner or right inside the post, but I don't know. I don't think it's a howler or anything like that.
Well, it's not a howler. Again, it's just about these are the subtle things that allowed Celtic to get in. And when your other goalie is good and the other goalie is the number one.
Yeah. Svolo's not been perfect though, and I just don't know. He has been good, and I just don't know. I don't know how much of a difference it's made, but you could be right.
But we come on to the other part that I should have mentioned. It's with Gordon's kicking, and when Hearts were
get one game from Svolo as well of them, even though he's all round better.
With Hearts struggling to hold on to the ball in the first half, I feel like Hearts could have killed Celtic then. But with the fact that it became more of a 50-50 game for the majority of that first half, despite how poor Celtic were, and I think a big part of that was because of how poor Gordon's kicking was from there, and that created that environment for a longer period than it needed to be, because as I said, once Hearts got to grips with the game, and especially Leonard got to grips with the match he was winning, because the first half it looked like he'd never seen a football before, but once he got there, Hearts absolutely battered Celtic, and that could have been for longer.
Especially the start of the second half. I thought that's exactly what I was going to say, that there was no quality for ages. Celtic were aimlessly punting it. Hearts weren't too far away either. They were playing very direct, although it was a bit more of a controlled direct style, I thought. It was still lots
understandable with the lineup. Exactly.
What I was saying.
It's understandable. What McInnes done, I think, was the right way to play that.
McInnes will play that way against lots of other teams, not as good as Celtic. It's a thing he likes to do. He likes to mix it up. But then, and Leonard you're totally right, the players Hearts were missing, not only the midfielders, and more than two midfielders if you go through the ones that have been injured before this game. Lawrence Shanklin's the forward who drops off the front to do a lot of work in there as well. So even that was taken out of there. They had to actually go out and sign somebody to bring some control to the midfield. And you're right, he was the guy that managed to get his foot in the ball, especially at the start of the second half when Hearts managed to get level. But the thing is, they let it slip far too easily. And I have to say, for all the Celtic bashing we're doing on this, that was a moment of quality for them to get ahead. The two touches are just unreal. I didn't really notice it at the time. I'd started to write something. That's sort of the dangers of the second half, that you're sort of trying to get things ready to file on the whistle, but there's still, especially a game like that, there's still a lot happening.
On.
And I didn't really see the goal at the time, and I didn't appreciate just how good Gvanskara.
Vankara,
It sounded like the guy who was saying tarantula on the highlights. He's got big long limbs as well, doesn't he? An amazing touch from him and an amazing instinctive touch from Maeda just after it to create the chance. And I suppose one of the risks of having Milne on the right was McCart and his lack of pace in the fullback area, and he gets done with Yang, and you see that happening there. But yeah, I thought it was a moment of quality from Celtic, and it was quite rare in that second half, even up until they went down to 10 men.
And you're spotting the difference. Whenever Celtic managed to get the ball round the box, they were able to work it and get to the byline. They were getting cutbacks. You looked dangerous when they got up there. It's just that they couldn't get through the lines to ever get there. And that's the beauty of when you talk about the quality, when they do get in there, and that's why they still win in games, because once they get in those positions, they quicken up. And I thought Hart did a really good, Milne did a really good job on Tierney, for example, which stopped that becoming a real problem for McCart. Whereas, because I was looking at that, I think, when I was first watching the game, I was like, the four centre-halves, I get it. But the problem is, it's especially like Celtic love to use the wide areas. They love underlapping. And I was worried that Hearts would basically, like, when you're defending the crosses against the 10 men, against like pretty shit teams who are just lobbing the ball in the whole time, that works really, really well. But I was thinking against Celtic, you're actually making guys vulnerable who are going to struggle against. So I was worried. At the first, I was like, I'm a bit worried about that. And I think it might have even cost Hearts if Celtic were able to possibly move the ball. But there were so little times they were able to isolate these centre-halves in these wide areas.
They take the ball and make triangles and create rotations in midfield and pull players out of possession. But there was very little of that from Celtic.
And I know, and when you watch the game, and I know he's been very poor this season and his head's elsewhere, but O'Neill's obviously raging at Atati for what he done in the European game. That game was crying out for him.
I'm surprised not to see him at any point. But he's looked like he can't be arsed a couple of times as well recently.
I mean, he's checked out of there. But that game was crying on someone with a bit of quality in there. And like you're saying, to be able to make those third man runs in behind those, in between the Hearts centre-halves and the full-back. And also, like, if the ball's been given away constantly anyway, I'd prefer to bring on a guy who's going to take risky passes and maybe try and make something happen, because you've got no fucking control anyway. Yeah. So it's not like Atati's going to ruin the fact that you're on that you're on top of the game, which is something that can be sort of levelled at him as a criticism. So I think that maybe what really worked in the Hearts' favour, and again, try to make a point. Maybe not the time for point making. I would, if it's my, like, it's a massive one-off game. You've only got 2 more games against that team to make up this ground. I would maybe look beyond it rather than make up. That's my opinion. But you're like with the striker, he done absolutely great for that goal. But similar to Leonard, he had large parts of the game where it looked like he was just fouling. And so it was like the 2 debutants. I was like, they just made their teams worse. Because at points I was thinking, well, Johnny Kenny at least runs the channels and causes havoc in behind, even if he can't finish. But yeah, you saw the sort of step up in quality when he got into there, and maybe what he can bring to Celtic.
Got that languid style. Sometimes those strikers are really awkward and can be really, really, really good. They can, I don't know, and he's got a good. I know he didn't do too well in Germany, but he had a good record in the Czech Republic. So maybe that translates a bit more to Scottish football. So yeah, he could potentially have despite having, I agree with you, just a very foully start to his debut. He showed a bit of quality, and maybe he does have something. I'm not going to really discuss the red card. I mean, you can just go on social media for endless debate on the red card.
On every single thing that ever happened in this match, by the way.
I know. Pulling up, why was this not a foul and all this kind of stuff. Like,
every single thing. There's things that I don't even remember happening in the game that I'm seeing clipped out on social media. I'm just like, Christ alive, move on.
I know. Anything else you want to talk about from this game before we move on, though?
As I said, I thought with Hearts, they again, to go back to McInnes, the physical nature of it, they put the shitters up Celtic so much. They were aggressive. Once they went into that aggressive mode, to see how much Celtic weren't fancying that, I think it's really, really worrying. If you're a Celtic fan, you're like, I'm watching that game. They need 3 players to go straight into the team. And what that back 4 that Celtic finished with, I know they've got injuries with Vickers and Johnson. I know Tierney went off injured. I know that's quite a lot of players in there. But there's no way that Dane Murray...
And Bologna as well, what happened in a few nights before and stuff, yeah.
Aye, and like so I get it, but there's no way that Dave Murray should be in your Celtic are in 4 competitions at the start of the season. So the fourth man at the centre half can't be Murray. He's clearly not anywhere near up to it.
Stephen Welsh has had a good season, yeah, exactly.
So you've got a guy who's playing well, you've brought him back, and then you decide not to use him, and you're ended up bringing Murray on. It's just like, what the fuck is going on? It just nothing makes, like as I say, it's shit. Like as much as you slag off Rangers and like Hearts like playing above themselves and maybe like gaining points on top of what they shouldn't have or whatever, and it's a lot of hard work, there's a lot of dig, it's very Derek McInnes what Hearts are doing, and it's impressive in that way. But with Celtic, it is beyond shameless that they're in, watching that game, seeing the situation they're in, it can't be said enough. And people like moan at their fans for being entitled and stuff. It is fucking shambolic. When you watch that game yesterday, I couldn't believe that was the best that they could serve up. And for Hearts, it's like an opportunity missed. They really could have got something there and basically put them out of the title race right there and then. So like Hearts will be disappointed, but with O'Neill, at least they seem to be able to hang on. But it's hard to see them being convincing enough that they're going to get 9 more points than Hearts this season. Like for the rest of the season, it really is. I'm starting to really think that it's going to be between Hearts and Rangers unless Celtic go out and sign 3 players who are good enough to come in. I don't think that team looks like it's got it, because if they put the shitters put up them like that and that's the response you're able to get, that's pathetic.
We will move on to the Falkirk Stadium where
talking of pathetic, yes,
striker scored a hat-trick, but it was not the £6.5 million man. It was Falkirk's Barney Stewart in a 4-1 victory. There was a Grant Hanley fresh air swipe, caused an own goal for the 4th, and Rocky Bashiri got what turned out to be a consolation at the other end. I'll probably just give the floor to you, mainly for this one, Tony. I think we should start with Falkirk. What did they do right?
I thought, well, firstly, I mean, just I don't know how I can wax lyrically anymore about what John McGlynn's done there. I think it's this season. I think we've pretty much seen 3 things that just never happen. And I went for this sort of separately, but I wanted to talk. I think this is a good weekend to really just go across them. Is we've got Hearts leading the way quite comfortably, really, at the top of the league going into February. We've got a foreign manager coming in preaching that he's going to do this and that, and the style and the passing out for the back without having lots of time on the training ground, only having 1 pre-season, not bringing in loads of players and running with that. So, and being able to do it, making a squad of 16, all being able to do it. Things that we basically had stated to ourselves is impossible to do here without signing loads of players.
I was thinking about this when I was watching Sports Scene on Saturday, honestly, the same kind of thoughts.
And then we moved on to and then for Falkirk, for a team to come up, and they're using, I think in that lineup, there was 6 from the Invincible season in that lineup to come through League One, Championship, Premiership, and to not like move off John McGlynn's principles in terms of how he wants to play. Don't get me wrong, he mixes it up a bit and it's smart, and I really like the way Falkirk play in general, because it's like they still play that way, but they're very, very, they're quick to switch. They'll go long when it's on, when they've sucked people in, they're happy to do it. They won't always, they don't just pass for pass's sake, much like Motherwell. But for him to do that, to bring those players through the whole thing without moving from his principles and becoming more hard to beat or whatever, when he's moved into the top flight, and they are sort of like what that team just beat, like both Edinburgh teams back to back, one of them absolutely destroying them.
2 players from uni sides as well that they signed as well, I think. And Keelan Adams.
Keelan Adams. Yeah. So these are things that we have basically written off as not possible in Scottish football. Like those 3 things, all of them, and they're all happening at the same time. And I just, where Falkirk yesterday, the way that we were moving the ball, they were bringing Hibs on the press, they were spot on. It was so well coached on when the triggers to move into midfield, and they would drop off to collect the ball. They were really smart, I think, in the way that they moved Miller away from the central part that he's played quite a large. Basically, when he managed to get his form this season, Calvin Miller, was when they moved him into a central position. They moved him out wide, which I thought was a really clever idea, because even though Megwa, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Megwa in general, but his defensive work has been pretty good. He's very much a one-dimensional player at this level anyway. He doesn't have the physicals to be able to do the full right-hand side and sort of be an outlet for Hibs to go in the right. But I think what they've done with Calvin Miller is that they totally pushed that side of Hibs away. So that meant Megwa could barely ever get forward because he had a handful with Miller. And then plus, once Miller started getting the better, Megwa, he went off recently. His confidence is starting to diminish after sort of like a good few games in there where he played well. And now that's that move. So Miller got, and he had him on toast for the 90 minutes. But what that also done is it meant that Megwa was playing Chaiwa was playing in the centre and midfield. But he was needing to move out on the right constantly because either to support Megwa or to give him some width because Megwa wasn't able to do it. So that meant that Falkirk were able to move Chaiwa from the centre of the park and then they were able to dominate that middle part against Hibs in there. So these subtle changes that they made in their style and where they moved players worked an absolute treat. I don't really want to go into obviously we've got the rumours that VAR and the offside wasn't working, hence why we didn't see the lines in the Hibs game. That was what the radio claimed at the weekend. We didn't see lines for the Barney Stewart first goal, and we also didn't see lines for Nisbet, the disallowed goal. But I don't really want to go into that. I think that's just not worth it. We all know the problems with it, and now it's moved on from there even being just problems with the people using it. Also, this thing doesn't work.
Yeah, I think they're getting to the point where we just need to do a show on why we should get rid of VAR, basically. Not talk about these things on these shows and then just put it all together in one show. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to go into that. But so Miller just was tearing it, and then Falkirk, they were able to get the ball to Miller, and they were getting him Megwa one-on-one, drilling cross in the box. I think the amount of goal, Barney Stewart scored basically 3 of the same goal.
Yeah.
And then also across the board this week, crosses and cutbacks were all really good. And I think this is why these are the situations that people score goals from. And I think the fact that the deliveries were all really good across the board is the reason that we ended up with shit tons of goals and shit tons of teams getting absolutely battered because they were making those. Keskinen in the Aberdeen game and obviously Miller in this game for getting like Barney Stewart to get in there. He was clever. He was dropping off. He's been a really clever signing to bring back. And I know that, and especially after Falkirk were missing Parkinson after his really good game against Hearts last week. It's really cool to see Stewart it's almost like, right, I need to go. I need to play. This guy's come in and pushes Stewart into another level, which he does in this game. And I thought they were tremendous. The way they used, as I said, the weaknesses of Hibs' wide areas, which I'll come on to from a Hibs perspective soon, but the amount of times that they were willing they would play nice football to get one-on-one against Megwa, but see on the other side, where it was Iredale and Obita had so much work to do because there was so little for the right-hand side coming, as I was stating, because of what Falkirk done to pin Megwa back and make him in trouble. And then on the left-hand side, that meant that we were having to use Obita a lot to create anything going in this game, which is the only source of impact the Hibs were able to have with Obita on that left-hand side. But that meant that Iredale was getting left. And Iredale's been quite weak and vulnerable this season, but they weren't playing around him. They were clipping balls in behind him, and they were getting lots of joy on that side to do that. So it was the variations in whatever side they were attacking on had clearly been worked on in terms of the weaknesses of the players that they were coming up against. So you can see clear sort of instructions that are being used on top of the fact that the team looks really good and all these players have stepped up massively. And it's one of the most, before I come on to Hibs, it's one of the most impressive performances of the season. My team, we could talk about Hibs and their current guys, the worries they've got, but if you look at it, it's a newly promoted team battering the team that finished third. And I mean battering. Hibs are lucky that they didn't come out of that 6-1. Would not have been any sort of against the rules of what happened in this match. It was definitely their hand. They were all over Hibs and were all constantly getting in behind and making chances. So fair play to Falkirk. They are just unbelievably impressive what they've done. I've never seen a team do it, and I didn't think it was possible at the start. And it's pretty incredible to watch it all come to fruition.
I think that Partick Thistle maybe did something similar. I'd have to have a look. I'd have to have exactly. I'd have to have the look.
It wasn't up for League One right through. Didn't
they get back-to-back promotions? Didn't they?
I don't know. Maybe you're right.
Maybe was it Livingston? Maybe around that time. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. Maybe I'm getting mixed up. I'll need to look that up.
And now Falkirk they're banging for going for Europe. They're banging that because fifth looks like they're going to get it. So they look very much in the case for that.
They're in form at the right time.
And that Scottish Cup's open. you're not going to sit here and say you'd be shocked to see them at Hampden. You wouldn't be. You would.
No.
I mean, I think there's a fair chance that it could well happen. And then you put them on a big pitch, blah, blah, all those other things that people say. Who knows what they could do to a team on there on the day? Because I said they've just went to Tynecastle and in a big game. Hearts really want to win that, obviously. It's Hearts have a great chance and they turn them over. But shall I talk a little bit about Hibs for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, let's talk about some of the issues they're having. Obviously, part of it's players missing. There was a bit unfortunate.
7 first-team players
going into this game, especially with the late call-ups going into this game. Quite short in a few areas. Some of that's down to recruitment, I guess, and then not being quick in this window as well. But it seems that after a few results where it looked like Hibs were maybe looking up for a little while, Hearts and Aberdeen at home, the disappointing cup exit, and then there's this really, really difficult result to take and performance to take. What's kind of happened between those two short spells?
I think even the Kilmarnock game, which Hibs won 3-1, Hibs were not good. They were really poor. This has been in the post, in my opinion. Like not just a defeat, like someone really taking Hibs to task, basically showing up their weaknesses, showing up their pragmatism. You know, eventually, sometimes you can, as you well know, I mean, we talk about Derek McInnes over the years, is sometimes you can get too pragmatic. And then you actually just you're not doing anything. You're not really taking part in the game. And another team takes the game by the scruff of the neck and asks you too many questions and you sort of fall apart. But if I'm being frank with Hibs right now, there is not a member of that footballing side of the club that isn't underperforming. That'd be that off the park. We've jumped through in recent times and years where we jump from sort of system to system or ideal to ideal and how we want it to work in terms of build. Like, are we going for young players? Are we going for Scottish-based players? Are we using Malky? Have we got Garvin Stewart? Have we got the Black Knights involved? You know that? And it feels like every sort of 3 to 6 months, there's like a shift in the aim and the ideals of how we're going to build up and be a success. So that never works. And I believe that has an impact on why there's no fucking players in right now, because we had the Black Knights move on very recently. And that's all going to, and the ideas that would have been going around and how that all worked, that would have had an impact on how we're going into this. It just, the joined up thinking always seems to change, which has an impact. And without talking about Hearts and with Jamestown, see, the beauty of these things is even if they don't work, you're cocksure of what you're doing. So like you just go, that's the one we're going for them. So sometimes you get them wrong, but in terms of like getting work done, do you understand what I mean? We put trust in it, we put faith in this. Yeah. Sometimes they're going to get it wrong, but in terms of the clarity of mind,
rate is good. Yeah, and
the clarity
I know
of
what
mind,
you mean. Right? Okay, there's a direction everybody's going in, kind of thing.
And you just go for it. And if it doesn't go well, then you move on to the next. You know, and like with Hibs, it looks like they've been stuck on like Paslak as a right wing back, and that isn't really. They look like they're holding off. It's like it's all good to go, but they want to get a replacement in. But we've been looking for a right wing back since the start of the season. Everyone knew it was like a weakness in the Hibs team. We obviously, with David Gray, he knew he wanted. We've never really replaced Miller. We didn't replace Miko up front. So that means Biawi's been running to the ground. So that's all the off the pitch side of it, where the sort of transfer and Malky Mackay and all those guys aren't pulling their weight and they're leaving Gray sort of short-handed with weaknesses that are being more and more exposed as weeks go on. And then you come to Gray and the way that he's doing it, he's too wedded to a formation, he's too pragmatic in the way that he does things. He doesn't make decisions quick enough on the pitch. But and that means and he gets outthought by teams. And this is, and as I said earlier, it's been coming. And the fact that he finally changed, and I'm hoping that this is like the Dundee moment from last season. That's my hope. And then he changed formation in this game. Then I'm hoping that the next game comes against Rangers and Hibs are absolutely brilliant. And it all happens again. But all the differences, he went 4 at the back rather than 3 at back. And it's just the twist of all that. But I don't really believe that's the case, because I actually think this Hibs team's unfortunately getting worse. And then you come on to, so that I've always thought with the Hibs, the way that the makeup is, that Hibs should have always had someone in charge alongside Gray as a support. I think we should have some more experience, someone who's more of a, like, let's do a Gerrard and Beale comparison, if you like. So, because I think Gray's got loads going for him, loads. But then when he turns round, it's like a new coach in Liam Craig. Everyone's new. And I've always thought that was a bit weird as a way of setting up. But now it feels like it's too far gone, that whoever you put in, rather than supporting Gray, you'd actually undermining him because he's been in the job for too long.
Exactly,
so whatever you do now. So I feel like personally that's maybe like a unique opportunity that Hibs maybe had to have like a figurehead who would have stayed for years, have everyone inside who's very good with the fans. He's good at not getting too high and too low. He's got loads of he's good at improving players, and he's popular with players. And these things are really good things to have. But he seems to lack other sides of his game and sort of tactical acumen and decision making and within games. That someone else, a good coach or a good sort of like assistant manager, could be very good at doing that. Who maybe lacks all other things that I'm talking about, because at this level, getting that full package is probably not going to happen a lot of times. So doing these things is probably be a smart thing. So that's where I think he lacks, and maybe where the club have missed a trick on when they could have done something that was maybe similar to that. And then you come to the players. They're switching it on and off when they feel like it. You know, that's a simple sort of case. And I feel like sometimes they're being made to play within themselves, maybe because of Gray and the style, and I would accept that as maybe something they have to go through. But at the same time, when you're seeing how they can put a performance like they did against Hearts in that opening half, and how much energy is involved in that, exactly. And that's when and things are going wrong. You know, like we have to take off Nicky Cadden during that game. You know, there's adversity within that, and it doesn't stop them going forward. So that removes those excuses that you can make for it at other times, because the club team can clearly face up to that in the right environment when they want to. But in this game, it's like Bowie epitomises that. When he's at it, he looks like one of the best strikers you're going to see in this league. Mm-hmm. And then when he's not, he looks like he's never seen a football in his life, and it's bouncing off him, and he's just fighting, and he's not going towards the ball. He's always wanting to fight, and his decision making is hopeless, and it's bouncing off him. So there's, as I said, to go through that as quickly as I could, really, it's just all the sort of like the collective responsibility, I think, across on the field, the management and coaching team, and then your recruitment team and your sporting director, is that right now I would say every single person's underperforming. And rather than it just being frustrating because Hearts in the top, I think that's too small-minded, really, as a way of criticising the Hibs fans about their opinions right now. I would say it's just because there's an opportunity being had this season in multiple competitions, in multiple scenarios. Rangers and Celtic are shite. It's not just about Hearts being up there. It's the fact that there's an opportunity for someone to be up there, and it's Hearts, and there's opportunities for Motherwell to get up there. Yeah. So there's opportunities for everyone. It's a season. It's a once in a decade, once in a 15-year season, and Hibs have missed the boat on it. And it's all because of underperformance from all those people. It's not about lack of investment or lack of money. It's people not performing that are in their positions to do it, and that's not good enough. And everyone has to share responsibility on that.
Speaking of underperformance, Aberdeen hosted Livingston and won 6-2. They were well worth their win in the end. I'll maybe give a wee introduction to this game, Tony, and then you ask me a couple of questions, since I was the one that watched this game.
You watched this game, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's worth. I'm not going to go through all the scorers because it was mental. What I will say, just to give a brief overview of how it went. Livingston did go 2-1 up after Aberdeen took the lead, but it was very much against the run of play. They were being well outperformed. It was 2 set pieces, not that they don't count or anything, but it wasn't as if it came from Livingston dominating the game in any way. And also it came just after that really weird decision when the referee was sent over to what it looks like. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but it looked like, and it was suggested at the time, that they couldn't draw the lines for the offside, so the referee went to the monitor to make a decision looking at the still,
to make a subjective decision,
which sounds a bit mental.
Someone else can make off the pitch, and if you can't make it, then surely the old rules are, if you can't make it, and change the position, then it stays on the pitch. So I found that bonkers.
I can understand Aberdeen. Professionally, you probably shouldn't be making that kind of excuse, but I can understand that riling Aberdeen and it getting the better of them, and that's maybe a factor as to why they fell behind to Livingston, because otherwise there was no indication that Livingston were going to win this game. And it showed in the second half. There was only one team in it. Peter Leven made a couple of changes, basically went with 2 wide players either side of Nisbet. That worked. Mitchell Frame from left back, who's played the last couple of games, gave them some width from left back as well. And he worked well with Keskinen, who was able to come inside. And I suppose there was something else I was going to say about the team there, but I can't remember. Oh yeah, I said this to Joel a few weeks ago, and I think the Bilalovic performance kind of backs it up. But Aberdeen's summer transfer window was pretty poor in hindsight, and the two best players, it seems, were the two players that they bought as project signings, in Bilalovic and Kjartansson. And I know he's sort of dropped out the team after a couple of appearances recently, but it just shows you, like, for all the money that they threw about, it's these two project signings. And Bilalovic was, again, in this game, one of the guys that caught the eye. Yeah, he was good. I mean, he's still got bits to his game that he's still very raw and like needs work, but he's got something about him. He can like beat a man. He can score a goal. He's just a handy player.
He looked like a competition winner in a couple of those games against Rangers.
The Rangers when he was bad.
But it looked like Peter Leven really fancies him, likes him as a player, because he barely started a game previously, and then the minute Levens came in, he's put tons of sort of responsibility and faith in him. I was going to ask you about Frame. I know that he put in some really good balls. It's interesting to know how he performed, really.
He's good. He looks athletic. He got up and down that side really well. I mean, I know that's been a bit of a problem for Aberdeen this season, hasn't it? Between sort of moving between Devlin and Jensen on either side, and then Lobben coming in for a little bit as well. I'm sure he ended up playing both sides at one point as well, but he did come in initially at right back.
It's been like an absolute mix, and just whatever comes out, try it. Just when the desperation times come, where you just like, try that today, see what happens.
But it did allow, as I said, because he was able to get up and down like that, it did allow Keskinen to have a really big influence in the game, whether that was getting down the outside sometimes or cutting inside. And he got his goal towards the end. He was sort of putting polish on the result towards the end. That last goal was brilliant, but his performance up until then was absolutely superb. Yeah, he was brilliant.
And that's, I think, a big thing with Keskinen is because I think he's got talent. I think we've all spoke about the fact that we see something there. But I think when someone's a bit raw like Keskinen and he's pacey, I think the fact that you're right, with Frame giving him an option and sort of creating overloads for him to really go at people. And because obviously we've seen, I was about to say we don't want to get carried away because Livingston are fucking terrible. But obviously, like, we've seen Keskinen do it in big games against Hearts, for example. I mean, he's got 2 goals against Hearts and 2 winners against Hearts over like the 2 seasons at Pittodrie. So it's not like he's only ever shown up against the weakest teams in the league, for example. But I think for Aberdeen and whoever the new manager is, I think you see it in this game. It's concentrating on getting everything out of Keskinen and Nisbet. These are your best forward players, and they both need work for different reasons.
Yeah.
But that's where you need to focus. And if that means you play a younger, more athletic fullback who's maybe not as safe as a pair of hands as Jensen is, for example, if that brings more out of Keskinen, I think that's worth it.
Especially in a game like this, and a team that's just going to come in and sit and defend against you as well.
And most teams do that against Aberdeen anyway, because I've seen the Hibs do it, because, this kind of just works. So just do it. Let's not reinvent the wheel. It's like sometimes when teams are playing Celtic, you're like, well, we could actually dominate them, but actually we'll still just let them have the ball, because it's just easier to do what we want to do when they do it, when they get frustrated. You see teams do that against like Hibs, Hearts and Aberdeen, even when they're absolutely shit, because you're like, well, they're expected, the fans are going to force them to have the ball, so just let them have it, even though we could if we wanted to go and dominate the game, but we'll not do that. But I think, and then we see him with Nisbet in this, and again, just goals in the 6-yard box, just like Barney Stewart, because the
one that was chopped off was a beauty.
That was a lovely goal.
The way he takes it, the run, the touch and the finish is all absolutely exquisite.
And it's liquid, Kevin Nisbet. I've done this pod with Tom last week.
That's exactly what I was thinking about when I was watching his performance.
Just so you can think about like that, we all know that quality is there. And as I said all the time when I'm doing that, he's in terms of all the Scotland players, he's the most sort of European style striker in terms of his touch. Is sort of variation and ability of finishing, all that. And you saw that, and like that goal was just like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I know that's exactly what we're referring to when we were having that conversation. And for Aberdeen, if he goes on the tear again, just like he done last season, I mean, that is exactly what happened last season, and he's got a lot to go for. Is that for Aberdeen right now, as I said, like the top 6 doesn't necessarily have to be closed off. There's players there that are good enough if they get the manager right. And for a player like Nisbet, I think he's too far away from the Scotland squad. I don't think he will make it, but it's there to be had. There's motivation to do something like that. And if you can unlock that, and like I said, if you can unlock Keskinen like he did in this game, then who knows what it is. But he's brought a few people out for the cold leaving. I mean, because obviously we're seeing a lot more of Nielsen again. He came in as sort of like the right-hand man and then just totally was like discarded from the previous manager.
They brought Clarkson back in pretty much right away as well.
Yeah, so there's quite a few.
Didn't play in this game, but he brought him straight away. But then brought in Lyle Cameron, who's played since. Again, very good in this game.
Very, very good game for Lyle Cameron. This is a good game for him and Armstrong at Pittodrie.
Mm-hmm.
First, I know he played against Wraith Rovers. Good games for him to play in it because Cameron's like a nice player to watch. But obviously he maybe lacks the physicality and stuff. So to get the fans on the side when they maybe aren't over enamoured for getting a player for Rangers or that he turned them down in the summer or whatever it is, these are good games to get him started off and get on a decent footing with the Aberdeen fans because it's sort of games that feed into being able to watch him and be good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really helped for him. And I think they've got to take confidence in this, but I mean, the amount of false dawns that Aberdeen have, who knows?
False dawns, way. Right, let's move on to Livy.
Yeah, how bad? Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, said a few times recently, as have others, that they've been in a lot of games this season and they've still not been that far away, even points-wise, at the bottom of the league. But that's the Dundee United game. Playing well in the St Mirren game and then just not quite getting over the line. And then this. And you've really got to start worrying about them now. And I don't think I've not seen you've barely seen the Livingston fans get on Martindale's back at all in his long time there, but you can really see a lot turning now and just not having him anymore. And this performances like this, you can see why they were just not at it at all. They lost their discipline completely in the second half. Both. No, well, not so much. I don't mean like the red card. I mean more like shape-wise, and they just completely lost the run on themselves in that second half in terms of how they were set up. Not helped by Martindale himself getting sent off on the touchline for running his mouth. So, which I know can happen, but still, when you're in this situation and it means he misses, I actually don't know the rule off the top of my head. Sorry.
What's going to happen is they'll win the games that he's not on.
Exactly. Marvin Bartley gets the job to the end of the season.
Bones to the ball for playing computer games and we go all through it again now.
Yes, and I mentioned it in the last show that I did with Joe, which I think was behind the Patreon paywall, so I'll say it here, but one of the worrying things about the transfer window they've had so far is the only player that they brought in that was match ready was Scott Artfield. He got injured in the last match and wasn't available for this one. They've signed players from markets that are on their off season, basically. So the guy for Papua New Guinea, the left back who came on to make his debut,
Fatty, is it?
Yeah, he was like 9 days into his pre-season, and a few others were in similar situations.
Danzo,
Alex Tam, the striker. These guys need a wee bit to get up to speed. So, but they need them now.
And then hopefully for Livy, and then three wins in 43 top flight games. I know that's easy to do the split things and it shouldn't matter, but I think it does matter. I think you couldn't really afford to do the same thing as the last time. Like, you know what I mean, where it's like so out of your depth that it's kind of starts to get a bit embarrassing. And I mean, anyone who listens to this knows that I'm pretty much Martindale's biggest fan. And honestly, in my head, believe that no one has, over the last sort of like 6 or 7 years, has had more of an impact in terms of what happens on the pitch than him, in terms of his direct decisions that he makes and what he does with players. Like, I feel like he's more important. In some teams, it's like, I definitely think the players are more important than the manager. In Livingston's case, I always thought it's him. He's like an extra player on the park for them. Yeah. He's almost more important than the striker scoring the goal because he's the one, because he made left field decisions as well. And it was cute, and he was taking players that were
unfashionable players and making them good.
So I felt like he's like, no one was having that big an impact. But 3 wins in 43 at that level, you start to think, well, maybe people are just sick of you. And now he's been able to bring in players, so he can't really use that excuse. I know he's still on a smaller budget than most, but that's the parameters that are set for him being Livingston manager. And eventually that you can't always just point to lowest budget, because then why would you get the praise the other side? this is the parameters, and you're agreeing to be involved in them, and you'll have expectations to do it. So yeah, it's hitting that time where there will have to be a serious question asked, because he's just never winning any matches, and eventually that becomes a problem for anyone, including someone who's untouchable and is intrinsically linked with the football club as Martindale, and hopefully with whatever happened with Belika, I hope it isn't what it seemed to be, because
yes, let's hope not. Speaking of managers who have had an impact on the pitch, Neil McKinnon, no, I'm only joking, Jens Bertel Askew's Motherwell continue to roll on like a runaway train. Elijah Just, Tawanda Maswanise, Ibrahim Seed and Lucas Fadinger were all on target in a 4-0 win at Fir Park over 10-man Kilmarnock. A bit like Falkirk, Tony. We're at the stage now where it's just like you can barely praise these guys anymore. I think the thing that you could say here is that they haven't had many results where they've totally put a team away, and this was them doing that, albeit against 10 men and against a team that's clearly in a bit of a rut at the moment.
Just the fact that Motherwell thumping someone 4-0 is now looked at that this routine enough that we have it fourth on the second last game on the running order. I think that says more than probably the words that I'm about to use just now. But again, similar, I've been waxing lyric about Motherwell right for the start of the season. I was really impressed with the word go, and they're just unstoppable. And it's like they got a little shake in this game with the disallowed goal with Polworth, which is a really neat finish. And I feel for Kilmarnock at that point, because, well, I think that Neil McCann, maybe from what I've read and what I know and what I'm watching, maybe got carried away about quite how good Kilmarnock were in these opening games before the red card and stuff like that. I think they were well in the game, and they obviously created a good moment, and Polworth was really unlucky. And I mean, that's millimetres, if at all, offside for that one. And it's a really nice touch to take it around the goalie. And when it's not going for you, and the problem is like for these disallowed goals sometimes, it's like, well, that wakes Motherwell up in the way that they're playing against Kilmarnock. Then suddenly it's like what you've done is even worse than they're not scoring. And then they just totally, the red card I felt was really unlucky. Just in isolation, they might be bookings. Two of them together feels really unfortunate. Because in most games, I think you definitely get away with one of them. Because they're both pretty routine.
Especially the first one. I'm trying to remember the second one. But the first one, it's a booking the way he catches him, but it's not like he doesn't go in to do him or anything, or he's not late. He's just sort of like trying to put his foot in.
Just happens. And a young player, energetic, try to get in the game, in a game against Motherwell, who are really good, who are moving the ball. It's like I have this argument sometimes when you get really, really good players at fives, Craig, and they moan about getting clipped a few times. We're like, well, obviously, man, you're fucking brilliant. All right, and I'm slow and fast. and what do you want? So what you want to happen is I just get out your way, because I'm going to clip you now and again because I'm slow with it. But
I only have to say that to you a few times, to be fair.
But you know what I mean? Like, I physically have to take part in the game, otherwise this is a fucking massive waste of time. And we should just all stand back and watch you play really nice football. Like, I physically have to do this, and I think that's what happens there. It's like they're really good. They're pinging the ball about, and it's going to mean that a couple of the tackles are going to get mistimed. So I felt, well, I don't think it's like an egregious refereeing error or whatever. I just think over the course of it, like, I feel like I'd be frustrated with it on their foot. But to go to Motherwell again, I love it when I think they go up a level when Slattery's available. I say this all the time. I'm a big Slattery fan, and you see it in this game for the opening goal. It's a lovely little 1-2 with him and Just. And it's like Slattery, out of all their midfielders, is the most complete.
First goal's beautiful. It's
even
a lovely the finish, goal. It's just like that arced away from the keeper kind of thing. I love it.
It was a very computer game goal when you do like L1 and X for the 1-2s and they run. And when you play it in a computer game, it's a fucking piece of piss. Why does everyone just do that? But actually seeing it in motion in real life, which is much harder, they do that. And Slattery, he's like the complete player who can do sort of everything in that midfield, whereas the other players that they have are quite specialist in there with Fadinger and Just and Priestman, or when Watt plays, they're not like the full package. The system and the way that they all work together works really well, but Slattery brings a bit of everything in there, which I think always makes them much better. And I think is a big reason when they really put teams to the sword is when he's in there and playing. And with Mastroianni, I know Graham talks about he doesn't do anything but finish. It's like fucking watching like when Michael Owen came through at Liverpool. It's like that. He plays on the periphery of the game and on the shoulder and stuff, but every time I watch it, it's like a completely different goal every time. And this one's like a lethal volley, like right into the bottom corner, which he makes look like a piece of piss. And like the amount of times you see them and see them fresh aired or dragged wide or put over, and it's clinical as fuck. It's just like bang, done, goal. Another one. There's my 16th goal of the season. And if you watch his goals, they're all massively different in the way that he does them. And I think a big part of it, like you see him drift off the defenders for the goal, and I know there'll be criticism that there's only one guy in the box and he's the top scorer in the country, and get fucking tight to him, please, to the love of God, he's the only guy in there. But the fact that he's able to play on the periphery of the game is why he's able to do that. You can just drift around, and that's what Motherwell have been sort of good enough to allow them to carry a guy who's so clinical in his finishing, but doesn't, and it means that he can just drift into these positions to get up. Like the goal he scored at Easter Road, that was clinical as anything, man. Just at your feet, dragging it, drilling it right across. This one's the same, and it's just...
That was another cracking goal. Just everything about that goal was brilliant as well. The counter-attack, it was just brilliant. Not too dissimilar to the goal he scored, that Mastroianni scored at Tynecastle early in the season in the 3-3 as well. It was a counter-attack that out of nowhere that he just kind of swept in. They scored two really good counter-attacking goals that day.
And there's another example again. It's like we see the Slattery and Just goal, which is playing against a low block, blah, blah, blah. That, sorry for using the language, people. But like in the tight areas and working it, and it's really nice. And then like you're talking about is loads. Then we've got the other one with Mastroianni, which is a cross ball into the box where you have to pick a player out, to score the goal, which is a difficult one. And then we've just mentioned 3 counter-attacking goals off the top of our head. So it's like the variation in their play. And again, some of them what I'm talking about with McGlynn, it's like the manager isn't just doing things for the sake of it. And it's not just like Nick Montgomery when you're going like, this is so fucking boring and pointless and nobody's in on it and it's not working. The players don't look really well coached in it. It looks like someone going, what we're going to do is pass for the back. And that's what we're going to do, lads. Then do it. Even though these things are really difficult, and when to press, and when to jump on the press, and when to trigger long balls and behind and all that. That's really where the hard work is.
Being ready for all the different scenarios and stuff.
Like when I'm talking about to go back, I know we've moved on, but the Falkirk goal that they scored when they moved through and Miller got it wide, and for the second goal, and you see like Hibs pressing desperately, really intense pressing, and they're able to play around it. And obviously with Hibs, it was really weak in the way that they were disjointed between the press. But that's the thing now, with those teams, you either need to get that press absolutely spot on and do it properly to get any joy for it, or you just have to sit in and accept that you're going to be fully dominated by Motherwell or Falkirk, which for most teams isn't really on for a fan. So that puts the opposition managers, opposition fans, and the opposition players in this really tough decision that you're making, because it's like people aren't accepting of you playing in the way that you probably should. Like for Hibs, for example, they probably should have played different in that game, but that's not really acceptable, and that makes it different. And it's the same for Motherwell right here. Teams just don't know what to do, and they're just fucking brilliant. I know. Stephen Welch is away. It makes no difference.
I know. I was just about to say, all with the centre-back pairing of Stephen O'Donnell and Paul McGinn.
They're winging their fullbacks.
I know. What about an ancient? What about Kilmarnock? He got a point in his first game, Neil McCann, and then they had a bit of a disastrous exit in the Scottish Cup. Even though he said that his focus is very much the league, it was still just the manner of that defeat. Another red card in this game as well, and quite a thumping defeat. Do you see any kind of... Have you seen anything in McCann's time so far that he's going to manage to turn things around here?
I don't think so. I thought it was a mental decision. And I don't mean that against McCann. I really like listening to McCann. I think he seems like he comes across all right. And I think he probably is a pretty good coach. But bringing a guy who's not really had a number one's job recently and then asking him to come in at 6th or 7th biggest club in the country and they arguably have their worst team ever. Like, I don't think that is... I think a lot of Kilmarnock fans would probably push towards that, is that this is one of the worst Kilmarnock teams in memory, including the one that got relegated recently. And to ask McCann...
Sure, I heard that if they don't win their next game, they equal, maybe even better, I don't know, or worse than it, their worst winless record ever, and it's from the early 80s or something.
So we're talking about one of the worst teams in living memory for Kilmarnock. And just, is that when you go to like guys like McCann and Dodds? And I'm not saying they're not cut out. I'm not saying they might not find a job where they could do it. But just like, when you're in that much of a hole, you're going to turn to guys that not really done it ever. Really, and there's no real evidence of them, and they're probably more football personalities than they are coaches or managers over their time. Mm-hmm. And I know Dodds done that. I mean, got to a Scottish Cup final and stuff with Inverness. So as I said, and I know like Neil McCann, they done some decent work kind of at Rangers last season with some results. And I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying there's no room for them. It just seemed fanciful as the ones to go to when in this situation with this poor a team, that they're the ones that are going to dig you out. They probably need blood and snotters manager. They need someone who just put it by the scuff of it. And you get the feeling that it tells me that the other guys, your Robbie Nielsen's in that, looked at that team and thought, fuck that. I'm not getting involved. And so I feel like I don't really want to criticise McCann and Dodds too much. I think it's just an impossible situation that they're going into, that I don't know if they've got the skill set or the experience to properly deal with the types of players that are going to be put at their door. So I just don't see, it just seemed like a fucking bad decision, and I don't see where they're going to be able to get much more out of that Kilmarnock team, because there's not a lot to get. And as I said, it was going to take either a really, really good manager or a really fucking aggressive manager to do it. And I feel like McCann and Dodds might be, just don't have that. They're not those types of personalities to do it. So I really, really worry for Kilmarnock. Actually, neck on the line, and this is bad for both of them. I think both of them will go down. And the fact that they've got that championship, which isn't filled with like incredible, like sort of well-known top. There's not like a Dundee United in there and then another good team. No. You know what I mean?
St Johnstone are about the closest, I guess, because they were fairly established for they were established for a long, long time.
I bet they've been doing the bottom league for a long time as well. Their time was coming. And I still think that over whoever plays in the two legs, unless they do something pretty spectacular at the end of the window, and the way that how both of them are, like the runs that they're on, and it looks like it might well continue going on, I think they're ripe for being picked off by what would probably be thought of as one of the weaker championships over the last sort of decade. And that's not the championship's fault. That's the big clubs like our own that made that the case. And I still think that these two look ripe for it. They're
Neil Lennon's Dunfermline coming to form at the right time as well.
Imagine that. You feel Neil Lennon going there. You just think, what he done
Neil
to
Lennon
Hibs
in the
last
playoffs, he would fucking love that.
Exactly. And it's just like, so you think that these types of teams that are in there and involved in what they could do, Partick Thistle, you just think clubs that would bring a big crowd, big clubs in their own right, would smell the blood, and then managers like Lennon would smell the blood from, like, I mean, he smelled the blood against Hibs, you know, like the way that they'd done it, like he could smell that Hibs were in a sort of, even though the results had been good, they were in a bad moment, and he knew that he could create a game that they were going to struggle with. And so I would say it fucking reeks for the pair of them. And I don't think Neil McCann's the man to take you out the reek, if I'm being brutally honest.
We have made it to our final match of the evening, and it is Rangers 3, Dundee 0. It's the game that we have seen the least of. It is the game that is perhaps the most routine out of the lot of them. I think the 3-0, I mean, I'm not meaning like a 3-0 result against Dundee, Ibrox. I mean, maybe sometimes I do think it looked a little bit harsh on Dundee, the 3-0. I think Rangers were well worth the win. There was only ever going to be one winner, but I thought by the end of it, 3-0 looked a little bit harsh on Dundee. But once again, Rangers are now the main threat officially the main threat to Hearts after this. I think they maybe were a few weeks before this, but league standing wise, they are now officially the main threat to Hearts.
And I think the worrying thing for, if I was a Rangers fan, is they got the 3-0, but I think they were quite poor in this.
Well, they've done that a fair bit recently where they've set pieces have bailed them out, and I'm not saying that as a pejorative or anything. Hearts are neck and neck with them, got a point because of set pieces against Celtic. So it's not having a go, but they have matched Hearts on set pieces since they brought in Scott Fry as their set piece coach, and that's got them through a fair few matches. That and signing Fernandes, basically. But yes, it's allowed them to not play well and win matches.
But I feel like this game was maybe like even regressing back to sort of like the style, like really toothless, not aggressive, which has not been the case under Roll. Roll, it's like a lot of the time it's been quite aggressive, and they've just been shit because they're not very good. But they make things happen because they've got tiny. Obviously, they've still got more quality than most because they spend money on players. But like they were still aggressive in that. But this, they look pretty toothless. Are you allowed to say it? We got to that stage. Looked like they missed Chermiti in the match. I know, like we can slag him off, and he's
can't remember what I was listening to, but somebody. Might have even just been some clip from like one of the tabloids on social media or something, but somebody suggested that they're a Cyril Dessers away from winning the league.
So with Chermiti, is like Ewan says this a lot, and I've been trying to watch, because obviously it's easy to do, we all do it. You play a shite, you just like, that's it, they're shite. And then he was saying like, and I've seen quite a few people out of the Rangers contingent online, the ones that you would listen to, that I think are like they know what they're talking about, and a lot of them seem to be on like, well, Chermiti's the most rounded of the strikers. He's the one that can bring the most. He's got pace going behind. He can hold the ball up. He can actually do a tiny bit of pressing. It's just about a lot of the time finishing's really let him down. He doesn't look like he's a killer in terms of as a striker, which is a problem when you sign for 8 million for a team like Rangers who really want that. But in terms of the reality of the squad, Chermiti is without doubt the guy that should be leading the line, and without him, they look really, really. They didn't really press. They didn't really attempt anything. The highlights told you the story. There was just nothing. Just was like a blink, and there was a disallowed goal, and suddenly Tavernier's lining up a penalty. So, but that could be any week over the last decade, of course. But so that would be a worry, and the fact that Dundee were able to look quite comfortable for large periods right until the end, when obviously they're stretched, they're taking risks, and then Rangers are able to get the 2 goals, and that looks like kind of like maybe a farewell goal for Danilo, Craig.
I think it's even been confirmed this afternoon, has it not? I'm sure I saw something about it being confirmed. Let me just, I'll try and do it on the fly quickly here. But
no more dancing dad.
And, I was
no more walking with a limp.
Very poor pass from Joe Bevan to allow him in for it. Rangers, they received a bid. Sorry, I thought maybe it was.
You've got to assume confirmed. That they'll be accepting that, because that's the thing about Rangers. The Rangers thing, the worry about that performance there is that you've got to, obviously they brought in the wide player. What's it? Is it Olsen?
Yeah, Skov Olsen. Yeah,
Skov Olsen. So obviously that seems to be like a bit of a marquee signing.
A statement signing, yeah, it's definitely is. It's like, we want to win the league. It's signing. It's it's a guy that they are looking to pay. I know you've just spoken about Chermiti there on £8 million, but it's a guy that they're potentially going to spend £9 million on in the summer, and who was bought for €14 million just a year ago or something like that.
Yeah, and he's 40 caps for Denmark. This is obviously a guy who's well thought of round Europe. So that's a big thing. It looks like they're trying to bring in another striker. So we're moving into the bit. What would worry me is that Olsen comes in for a big Ibrox debut, and it doesn't really do. Does it? The fact that they regress that performance. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying.
I know what you mean. I just like, sometimes players take a wee while, but
I'm not saying even it's anything about Olsen. It's just that we're adding things to the team, and then you're still like you think there'd be a bit of spark of excitement even for the forward line. As a group, there were more players coming in. We're getting excited, so there's still a bit to go. about that, because I think if they sign him and then they invest more in another creative player, which I think is really what they need, maybe, because Asgard, I think, could be a useful player.
Yeah, he's shown I can, yeah.
But he's like, I think I've maybe said this off there when I was talking to Ewan about it, is that he plays attacking midfield like a poacher. I think is something that I spoke to, and that's fine. But again, he's not creating a lot of the chances. He actually wants to get on the end of them.
Wants to score.
Yeah, so I think they maybe still need to add someone else in there who can create these chances. And then obviously you've got Miovski and Chermiti. You'd hope that I would probably still say I'd prefer more creativity in that Rangers team, even more so than I would another striker. People might disagree. That's kind of what I still think. They don't press well enough. They don't play high octane enough. Like you say, they're relying on set pieces enough. And if they brought in this winger, if they bring in our creative part, then surely that would mean that they'd be able to start putting teams away and actually utterly like blowing teams away like what Rangers are meant to. For Dundee, on you go. Yeah,
I was pretty much about to. I was going to start with exactly the same words and then just kind of wing it from there. It looks like after a run of really good form and maybe going here with a bit of confidence, not least because of that, because they got a point at Ibrox earlier in the season, maybe a bit of a disappointing one, especially creating as little as they did. But at the same time, I don't think it's anything to get too despondent about.
Yeah, decent enough. They kept it solid, kept Rangers fairly quiet for a game like this for Dundee, you maybe want to get some, but at the same time, it's not losing momentum. And I think losing too late, a penalty, like we kept them at arm's length.
That's what I was saying about it not really being a 3-0. It feels harsh.
Feels like, no, they didn't lose anything from that. Like, it's not going to impact their sort of like forward momentum that they've built up in recent weeks. I'm guessing that obviously there's interest in Graham, but just that's starting to look like he's got 18 months on it. But with Kimitio and Clark Robertson both being injured now.
Yeah, Kimitio like for quite a while actually, I think, as well.
So that's gonna that kind of, Dundee, that kind of ties their hands. Even if they did want to sell Graham, they probably can't now. Even if
he wins absolutely everything in the air, by the way. Everything in the air.
He looks good. And that's 18, and he's still got 18 months, so they can still sell him in the summer for a reasonable bit of money, which they ultimately will if there's any sort of interest. But it looks like they might have to accept they might lose 300 grand on that for the fact that they can't sell him now because, well, just the team's doing all right. And I think it'd be mad to do that for a extra few grand when the team's actually starting to pick up some momentum, and then you'd be ending up with one centre half, and that's like Astley. It's not really going to be enough. They should probably be added a centre half, if anything.
At least it's happened in a window, I guess, that they can they can go out and address it. Is there anything else you want to add from this before we get out of here, Tony?
Not at all. I've enjoyed that, Craig. You've left a lot of room for me to rattle on, even in the Hearts game. I feel like I spoke too much.
Fantastic. I think we mentioned this before we came on air, but because we're worried about the time, but just what a weekend of football. What an absolutely brilliant weekend of Scottish football. We have not given, there's other games in there that would have been the headliners in any other week that we've just not managed to give as much attention as we would have liked. But thank you very much for all that, Tony.
My pleasure, absolutely.
And thank you to everybody for listening. Please check out all the other podcasts that we put out on a regular basis, including at patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. You'll find lots of different stuff going up there. There's a few different tiers that you can subscribe to. We will be back on Thursday, but until then, we'll see you all soon.